Welcome from Hollywood, California, the entertainment capital of the world. We're here on the Paramount Studios lot for Cinegear Expo 2014. This is Cinema 5D on the Couch, presented by G Technology, Røde Microphones, Vitech Videocom, Post Magazine, and Owls Media. This is your host, Nino Leitner.
Welcome to another episode of Cinema 5D on the Couch here from Cinegear 2014 in Hollywood, California. Today we have Jem Schofield from the C47 as our guest, producer and educator. Jem, is it a regular thing for you to come here from New York, Cinegear?
No, actually, it's first year at Cinegear.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've taught at NAB for 12 years, and I do a lot of other conferences and trade shows. But this year, I was asked by Able Cine to come out and do an event for them, help produce it, and I'm here for the show. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So is the event already over?
Event's over. It was a modern camera movement, advanced wireless solutions event, all-day event. We had Garrett Brown from Steadicam. We had Tab from FreeFly, and then a few other vendors. And it was pretty cool. About 50 people came. They gave away an M5, which was pretty cool.
Did you get it?
I did not get it. I wasn't eligible for it. And I actually, I've been on a lot of panels, but this time I got to moderate a panel with Garrett Brown and Tab Furshaw,
cool.
Which was pretty cool to
just
talk to them.
We had Tab on the show at NAB.
That's right, I've seen that. Yeah.
We talked about some people said that the movie is like a Steadicam killer. I think even Vincent Laforet made the mistake of saying that in the beginning, although he didn't mean it that way. But people, took up. Just quoted him on that, and but it's interesting that Tab, and Garrett are friends basically.
Yeah,
I mean they know their each other's strength of the systems, and there's not one way of doing it, I think.
And they've actually Larry McConkey, who's one of the greatest Steadicam operators ever. Have you ever seen the Hugo shot with the GoPro camera? Yeah. He designed that whole shot, and he designs. I mean, that's just one of the movies that we've seen these continuous takes. And he showed up at FreeFly, and he basically said he was going to be. Tab told the story that he was going to be there for a few hours, and like 3 days later, he had set up shop, and he was doing all of these tests with the Movi. And there's actually some behind the scenes stuff where he's using a Movi and a Steadicam together. So it's pretty interesting. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that I asked them about competition, which I think you did as well. And one of the things that Tab said is that what he tries to do is he just tries to out-innovate everybody. And somebody asked him, sort of where they are. And they're already 2 or 3 generations sort of in the future as far as how they're thinking about their products. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of systems that look the same on the surface. I think it's easy for people to think that they are all the same, but once you test them, you realize there's a lot of difference.
Yeah,
and you see a lot of their competitors, not all of them, but some of them, even in their demo videos, stabilize the footage in post, and you see the warp stabilizer.
Oh, you could absolutely. I've seen it many times.
Why would you use a stabilizer on a on a gimbal shot?
Defeats the whole purpose. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the C47. Why is it called the C47?
Well, that's kind of a mystery. That's the secret part that everybody has to figure out. It's production related. It has nothing to do with the airplane. But that's the one thing that I don't, even as an educator, I let people kind of figure out what the C47 is. But they go to the website and they look at the logo. They can kind of figure it out. It's there in the back as a wireframe. But basically what happened was I've been teaching now for almost 15 years. And I was one of Apple's main trainers for Final Cut Studio, and I did the tours and everything else. But about 7 years ago, I was doing all these training DVDs and things, and I thought there's a big black hole in production-based training. And then the economy tanked here about 5.5, 6 years ago, and I had almost no work for about 9 months. And I was trying to get work, but I wasn't, and so I decided I would just start a website, which is the C47, and I would continue to do education. I had already started to do production-based education at NAB instead of just post, and I would do a daily video podcast having to do with the industry, having to do with production, and I did a daily video podcast 5 days a week for 3.5 years. And so that's kind of how it got started. But then the byproduct of that was that some companies started to talk to me about creating content, because I was already a producer. And I've done a lot of videos for Canon. I've done some stuff for Zeiss that's more behind the scenes, and then Manfrotto, and so it's like this perfect mashup of being a producer, and then I also get to be an educator when I do both those together.
Cool.
And so that's kind of the whole concept of the C47 is to teach the craft of video production and filmmaking. So that's its focus.
Cool.
That's it.
And then you also started doing workshops?
Yeah, well, I'd already been doing workshops, but then, like a lot of us, when the 5D Mark II came out, there was sort of this explosion of interest in large sensor cameras that were now affordable. So I almost immediately started to do weekend workshops. A lot of the early ones were people who were transitioning from stills to motion, sometimes not wanting to do it, but were being forced to do it. But then, now a lot of my workshops are about camera movement, they're about lighting. We're using obviously a lot of different camera systems, so it's not just DSLRs, it's C100s, C300s, FS700s, things that are affordable, but are obviously better tools for production in a lot of ways in certain situations. So yeah, it's cool. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about audio, because we all know, we're all shooters, and there's a lot of buzz around new cameras.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a new camera, people go crazy. We know it on Cinema 5D. Whenever we post, it's a bit frustrating sometimes for us. There's just a news post about a new camera.
Yeah.
Gets more hits than any review.
Yeah.
Because people go crazy about new cameras. On the other hand, I think a lot of people just focus too much on the new camera and don't think about, because they think they kind of buy the expertise if they buy, a good camera, but they forget about everything else, the camera-related stuff like, lenses, lighting, movement, directing, screenwriting, all that kind of stuff. But also audio. Audio gets neglected, and I think that was something that you saw on Vimeo a few years ago when DSLRs really took off. Suddenly images were beautiful, but audio was terrible. It was worse than it was before, because the mics in those DSLRs are just atrocious.
They have horrible preamps, and if you're using the built-in mic along with the preamps that are in those cameras, you're effed. It's done. So there is a big lack of education when it comes to audio recording, and in almost any situation as a producer, if I can do it, I budget for a sound recordist. But the reality is, you and I know this, we run around a lot. We do a lot of stuff either just ourselves or with one or two other people, sometimes just ourselves. And so we're forced into positions of being sort of trying to be experts in sound recording, but we're really trying to be DPs and camera operators. And so I'm actually starting a new series for the C47 that's called On Set, and I just recorded the first 2 episodes yesterday at Able Cine. It's going to be a weekly series, which is also going to be on YouTube and Vimeo. And the first episode that I shot was on audio recording. I really wanted to talk a little bit about microphones and condenser microphones, which are the mics that we use most of the time in video and film production, and about polar or pickup patterns, and how most people will just go out, if they do in fact invest in a mic, they'll just go and buy what they say, I need a shotgun mic, and they'll go and buy that, but it's not necessarily the right mic for interior recording. They might be better off with something that has a different type of pickup pattern, what doesn't actually, have what we call a tail, where it's, this of course, but where it's recording from behind. So I had a few different mics from Røde, who I use all of their mics, and I had an NTG3, which has a supercardioid pickup pattern, which is more narrow, but it also has this tail where it picks up from behind. And then I had an NT55, which is a cardioid pickup pattern, which is broader in the front, but has almost no pickup or recording from behind. And I've been using those more for interior recording with much better results. And
better
also,
than the NTG3?
Yeah, I think the NTG3 is, which is very similar to the Sennheiser, MKH416 in terms of frequency response and stuff. I think that's a great exterior microphone. But as soon as you're in a small space where you have vents and things like that, because of that tail on the back of the mic, you tend to, or if your mic is close to a ceiling and, we get a lot of reverb and reflections, those types of mics are ideal for certain types of recording situations. But when I'm using a cardioid mic, it's great for 2 shots because you can position it between 2 people and has a broader pattern. But it has rear rejection, almost complete rear rejection. So inside, I've been getting much, much better results with a cardioid. And it's also, cardioid mics I think are great for on-camera mics. I'm not a fan of having a mic on a camera when you're running and gunning. But because even though it's a broader pickup pattern in the front, it picks up less handling noise when you're using the camera because it has less, it doesn't have that tail on the back. So that first episode is about audio. I did another one on lighting.
Cool.
And yeah, I think it's important, really important for people to understand what to do there.
So Røde is one of our sponsors, and they just released a bunch of new products, I think, this year or last year.
Yeah, I mean, they're fortunately one of my sponsors, and every company that I work with, just like you, they're companies that we use their products in the real world. You and I do production every single day, pretty much.
Yeah, the NTG3 is my go-to mic for most of the stuff when I do, like you said, when I have to record audio myself, and also Johnny and all the other people we work with. A lot of people who are have to work in one-man bands because very often also rely on Røde stuff because it's great value for money. I mean, for the money. If you compare to some other brands, of course there are better microphones sometimes, but they cost that much more that it doesn't make sense to have it as an owner-operator.
Yeah. I mean, the Røde mics give you a lot of value. They're very versatile. I mean, their lavalier is great because it has a Micon adapter, so you can adapt it to Sennheiser, you can adapt it to just a mini jack, you can adapt it to XLR, so I love that. Some of the new stuff, the Smart Lav, combined with their Røde Rec app, it's an iPhone, you get a wired mic.
Yeah.
And
you don't need the sound recorder anymore if you're a one-man band with DSLR, right?
Or if you just need to get a mic on somebody and you want to put a lav on them, $60 mic, $5 app US, and you have a pretty good recording that you can use. And it's a full-featured recording app. They're creating new adapters for just their regular lavs, so you can also adapt those to iPhones and other iOS devices. And you should get an NT55 because that mic is, it's time for you to try a cardioid mic inside because I think what happened was I built a small home studio for the C47 and I was having all of these reflection problems. And as soon as I put that cardioid mic in, it started to eliminate those problems. So it tended to be a better solution in that. It doesn't mean that you would never use a shotgun mic. I mean, we've got a sound recordist over here. He's also got a mixer in front of him. So if he's using something with a supercardioid or hypercardioid or shotgun pattern, he can actually go in there and actually dial in his mixer. We're not doing that. We're not getting that advantage. So the NT55 is great because it has a low-cut filter built into it, and it's a tiny little mic. And the capsule is actually, you can change it. So it comes with a cardioid pickup pattern, and it also comes with an omnidirectional pickup pattern. So it's, I think it's a great little mic, and it's at least in the States, it's under $400 US. So there's almost no reason why, if you're doing production and you have to do audio yourself, why you shouldn't have a shotgun mic in there with like that pattern, and then have a cardioid in there. So super cardioid and then just cardioid.
That's interesting.
And it'll give you some flexibility. So yeah, that's that's cool. Yeah.
And for the very cheap solution, the iPhone app isn't bad, and it solves 2 problems. You have to switch off. You have to switch to airplane mode. Which you should do anyway with any audio recording. But you have to do it, otherwise, if a call comes in while you're recording, you're screwed. Yeah,
it's great. And the Røde Video Mic Pro is sort of my go-to, just sort of like when I'm scouting locations and I'm trying things. One of the greatest things to do is to just take a DSLR. I have a 5D Mark III. Put a Røde Video Mic Pro on there. I put it on my C100 as well, and when I'm scouting, I can just run audio. Sometimes I'll just pick up the mic, place it about where a shotgun would be, and record that while I'm just testing out stuff. And I also use the Røde Rec mic for that. I'll put the Smart Lav on. I'll walk a space, I'll record audio when I'm scouting a location, and then I'll listen to it back and try to figure out where things are working and where they're not. So
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Awesome. So what kind of productions do you usually work on?
Well, I do a lot of educational stuff. So a lot of the stuff I do is for companies like Canon, where we're going out and I'm producing videos to teach people how to use their cameras or teach people how to do things having to do with production. But then I do a lot of documentary and corporate work. So a lot of stuff for nonprofits. There's a school in New York called Cooper Union. I do a lot of work for them. I've done some work for the record industry, but not music videos, more like electronic press kits and things like that. And I do some doc stuff. I do a little bit of narrative, but I don't do a lot of narrative. I think that'll be an area that I'll get into more as a producer as time goes on. But I'm interested in people. I like to sit down and do this. I like to talk to people about stuff. So documentary and corporate fits well for me and what I like to do. Yeah,
it's a similar mix to what I do mostly.
Yeah, you do a lot of stuff. I mean, you do press junkets, but you also do a lot of corporate projects.
Yeah, it's a lot of corporate,
a
and
lot of stuff,
documentary.
industrials, and and some of your work is amazing. So it's great stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
Hey, you also were one of the like me, one of the few ones who jumped onto Final Cut 10 right when he came out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like not a lot of professionals switched to Final Cut 10
immediately. Actually,
I did it too, and I was frustrated at the beginning, but it kind of worked for me, and it got better over time. And now I think it's really, really good, and it helps me being faster with my edits.
Yeah, I agree. I'm probably at least twice as fast in 10 as I was prior to in Final Cut Studio and prior versions. Yeah. I'm sort of NLE agnostic in the sense that I think people should use the tools that they're comfortable with and lets them, it lets them get their job done the way they want to. And so if people are using Premiere Pro, if they're using Media Composer, if they're using Final Cut Pro 10, they should be using the tool that they're comfortable with. I think if you're a professional editor, and I'm not a career editor, you need to learn all of them because there's going to be situations, and we're starting to see a lot of projects now come out on 10, where you're going to have to be able to understand how that app thinks. You're going to have to be able to, work with it. Multicam's great in it. The timeline index is amazing. You just really have to understand how applications think. Yep. And once you do that, then you can problem solve. And that's all we do in production, and that's what we do in post. And
I agree. I think there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the NLE space when it comes to interface.
Yeah.
It's been the same for the past 20 years, really.
Since Edit Droid.
Yeah. I mean, Premiere looks like the old Final Cut, but works better.
Yeah.
Avid is Avid. It's always been Avid, and they try to innovate, and it's a very specific kind of way you have to work in. Yep. If you submit to that, it works very, very well for editors. Yeah. But as soon as you want to do something else, then actually editing, it's a bit hard to deal with, for me at least.
Yeah.
So I agree. I mean, I probably wouldn't use Final Cut 10 if I was a professional editor, because Apple has lost like the majority of their market share. Because they kind of screwed up their introduction.
I think this conversation's over. I think we shouldn't talk about it anymore. But it is making us edit faster. Yeah. And when we're doing short form stuff, anything that I do that's under 20 minutes, I cut a lot of multicam, 4-camera stuff, quote unquote live event. Basically, we're isolating and then we're cutting in post. I think it's great.
And thankfully, you were helping us this morning on some technical problems, some severe technical problems we had on another show. So thank you for that.
No, anytime. It's my pleasure. I do want to mention one thing, which is I'm going to do a filmmakers intensive in Scotland at the end of July.
Yes.
And people should check it out. It's a 1-week program in like the middle of nowhere. Where you're going to learn basically lighting and shooting for doc and narrative. So that's going to be cool. The filmmakersintensive.com. That's like my plug for today, because I want people to show up, and we always do like great value, as far as it's like all day.
So people are hosted there. They live together in a hotel there, or
they'll actually stay locally wherever they want to stay. But I rented what's called a village hall in the middle of where I grew up until I was about 8 in actually a shire, literally. It's near this place called Traquair, which is south of Edinburgh. And it's the week before all the Edinburgh festivals, and basically every day from 9 in the morning until like 9 at night, we're going to do filmmaking. And it's going to be, we're not making films, you're learning how to light and shoot. So really up your game, basically, and there's going to be a lot of audio. In fact, the one of the first things we're going to do is do a whole whole session on audio
great.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it should be fun.
it's a similar approach to what we did with the filmmaking masterclasses, because I think it's important to bring people together and bring them all to a different place
I
from where
agree.
they live.
A
Because
million percent.
if you did, it would be very easy to make a workshop in a big city.
Yeah.
You would have it booked out quite quickly, I think. But the problem is people just leave in the evening and
They
they don't mingle, they don't network,
And that's what
that's
it's
where
about.
the real creativity happens. I mean, all these workshops I did with Philip Bloom and Sebastian Wiegertner, for example, I think a lot of like people bonded and stayed friends for life. And I
I'm
think
still
you had
friends,
the same
yeah.
experience.
Well, I mean, one of my best friends now is from my first filmmakers intensive, who lives actually in Vienna.
and
you
through
know,
who we met actually. Right?
actually, yeah. And so it's crazy how that happens. And plus, Scotland has beer and whiskey. So I don't
there's
know
no
about the
reason not to
food. I
go.
mean, we have haggis, but but all the other parts are there. So
The
it's
whole
good.
UK is like Indian food,
I like Indian food. though.
All right,
Thanks, Nino. Thanks.
So that was another episode of Cinema 5D on the Couch. We thank all our sponsors: Røde Microphones, G Technology, Post Magazine, Vitec Videocom, and Owls Media. And I'll see you on another show of On the Couch. Thanks for watching.